Shalom, that's hello, goodbye, peace in Hebrew, but not goodbye quite yet. Welcome to our new podcast series, available on all Apple, Spotify, and more. And we are so excited. This is our second podcast. I'm here with John and Bethany. Listen to the first one, you'll find out who they are. But we are stoked to be able to continue this series of myth-busting travel misconceptions. Now, this is a weekly podcast with our Getting Started with ETS series. It is meant for both the travel advisor, for pastors, priests, hosts, and also for guests. And so we hope that everyone will share this, like us, and come back for more because we've got a lot to talk about, and hopefully we'll be able to have some special guests on too.
Absolutely.
We have these first 5 episodes covering 5 basics of faith-based travel myths. And today we're covering myth number 2. Myth number 2 is the destination makes travel faith-based. How about John? Get us started. What are your thoughts on that?
So I would say the destination is a big part of it, but not necessarily the only part that makes it faith-based, because you have various offerings that ETS has. Like I'll throw a couple examples out there, like an Alaska cruise or like a women's retreat cruise, which is obviously very popular. Not necessarily traveling to faith-based destinations, but the beauty of those is that you're traveling with people of faith to those destinations. And like, I'll use the women's retreat as an example. You know, not a lot of biblical relevance in the Caribbean where that particular itinerary goes, but you know, you're offering this to women of faith that are going with a very faith-based guest speaker. And, you know, doesn't have to necessarily be the destination that's faith-based. There could be, you know, activities that are faith-based that bring everybody together. And in a sense of like Alaska, again, not necessarily of biblical historical relevance, but it's just you get to a place like that and you can just see God's beauty work in a different way, even though nothing in the Bible necessarily happened there. So I would say, you know, the destination does make, you know, a good part of, you know, what faith-based travel is, but it's not the only thing. It's really the fellowship and being together with other members of your congregation or other members of faith in general on something like that.
Yeah, and I'm going to argue back one point, because technically everywhere is a faith-based destination if you go back to Genesis and God created the earth, right?
Yeah, that is
so
a good
it's
point.
perfectly okay to go and enjoy like the wonder of God's creation with fellow Christians and other like-minded people. And like the example you gave, John, of the women's retreat cruise, getting to fellowship, have a worship service, hear, you know, about topics specifically for women from a faith-based perspective, you know, about what's going on in their life and how to get through different difficulties, and doing that with other women. It's an amazing time of fellowship. And so it doesn't matter that the destination you're going to the Caribbean, you know, it's the people that you're traveling with and the actual journey itself.
Absolutely.
Totally. I'm definitely on both of your teams with this one. If you really think biblically, God is relevant to every aspect of life, not just church and not just specific locations that take place in the Bible. And that's kind of what you're talking about. But a lot of people compartmentalize that and they're like, well, God doesn't care about that, or that's not really relevant. I'll worry about that on Sunday. Same thing. You could be going to Australia, but God is so relevant to Australia. You could be going to the Caribbean. God's so relevant to that. But if you have the right team with you, the right thought process and prayer process, you're going to be able to figure out how to integrate faith and facilitate that for your travelers. So I think our team does that really well, and we try to coach and disciple really our hosts to do the same thing. I'm proud of them. They really do a phenomenal job.
Absolutely.
So another aspect of the destination making travel faith-based, let's kind of dig into that a little bit more. Many of our destinations are actually found in the Bible. So what about those destinations makes them faith-based versus maybe the same destination could be not very faith-based if you didn't approach it correctly. Bethany?
Sure. Like, we'll take Israel, for example. There are many things you can do in Israel, not just Holy Land specific sites or thinking about it as a Holy Land. There are many people that travel to Israel and they go to Tel Aviv and they enjoy the beaches or the amazing art museums, or they go on just a general history tour and they learn all about the different occupations that have been throughout the land or about the different wars that have been fought there. There are culinary tours, so you can eat your way across and go make your own olive oil. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk of winemaking and olive oil making, in the Bible. So a culinary tour, you could still, find faith-based elements to it.
Yeah, sounds like a good time.
But what we try to do is any destination we're going to, we want to take you to the most meaningful places. So especially if it appeared in the Bible or it's connected to your faith heritage, whether it may be your Methodist. So you're going to England and we're going to teach you all about John Wesley and you're going to see where he lived and his children grew up and where his ministry came from and where he had his warming of the heart experience, or your Lutheran or any form of Protestant, because they really all kind of started with that movement. You can go to Germany and go to Wittenheim and see where the theses were nailed to the door. You can see where Luther translated the Bible. You can see where he met his wife and, they had their children and they grew up.
No,
Luther did. Well, once he was no longer a priest,
I think she was a nun, right?
Yes, she was.
so scandalous.
Yeah, interesting.
But they got married in a church, at least,
I digress.
But, you can go to Switzerland and learn about the Anabaptist movement and, Zwingli and everything that sprung forward with that and all the different movements that came from that. So it's not just the places that are listed in the Bible where you can really have a truly faith experience. I've had groups that have gone to South Africa and they've learned about the history of apartheid and everything it took to end that. And while they were there, they met with different ministries that were involved in ending apartheid and supporting all of that. And so they were able to connect with other Christians on a not specifically faith-centered trip, but still learn about what other Christians endured in a whole nother part of the world and get to learn about those ministries. So, the destination itself does not have to be faith-based for you to have a truly life-changing, faith-changing, or growing experience.
Totally. And you can have a much broader experience than just a Bible tour in many of these destinations, which we're talking about the culinary. In fact, I wanted to share a quick story. I had the chance of leading one of the largest Christian universities chemistry departments on a Holy Land tour, and they had several key Bible sites, but then they decided to dive into some of the chemistry and how it interacted with the Bible. So they actually visited a Dead Sea potash factory and learned about the mineral makeup of the Dead Sea. They visited, there's a place called Tila Techelet, which don't ask me what that means, but Techelet is the color blue from the priestly garments. And they've actually found the specific snails, Chilazon snail, that they took that blue, and actually you can get purple and blue out of the same snail. And the differentiator between that, to geek out a little bit, is actually sunlight. And so if it's in the sun, it turns to this perfect color blue. And if it's inside, it's purple. So those royal robes that Lydia would have been selling and everything would have been that purple probably. But the priestly garments were made out of this special kind of blue. And just within the last 20 years, they've resurrected that process of making that blue dye out of the chilazon snails off of the coast of Lebanon and whatnot. So being able to dive into, and I at least put on the Mickey Mouse ears and play like I was in a chemistry world, because I really don't understand all of that stuff. But that was so cool to be able to look at Israel from a completely different angle than I'd ever looked at Israel before, and dive in with them and experience that vicariously. And I think so many of our subject matter experts are able to cross-pollinate and pull from more than just the theological world, but actually pull from other aspects, whether it's culinary or historical, and do that so beautifully. It makes me want to go on every single one, but I have a family and I can't. So,
Or another great example is like our river cruise programs, where each day you have your choice of shore excursions. If you're on one of the Alma Waterways cruises, you're going and learning how they make chocolate here, or you're going to a vineyard, or, you're seeing all these beautiful historic places and walking around town. But when you come back on the ship, you're enjoying the fellowship with other Christians and our onboard programming with our lecturer and having times of devotion and fellowship, after coming back from going and kind of doing your own thing and exploring on your own that day. So,
and cultural programs too. They do a great job of that. So, well, there's another aspect, which is personal time of devotion and prayer and meditation, that does help make programs faith-based. John, can you tell us a little bit about how these itineraries, let's say the standard itineraries, are constructed to allow for that time on site, and maybe even in the evenings or in the mornings for time of devotional and refreshment as a team or individually?
Absolutely. So we definitely pride ourselves in making time for that devotion. That's really one of the biggest parts of doing a faith-based tour, especially, you talk about Israel, there's so many different sites to where it's so meaningful for members of a congregation to hear their pastor give a message at a specific site. So that's one of the biggest parts of these tours, is to make time for that, because a lot of people, this might be a once in a lifetime thing, to where that one moment, hearing from their pastor at a specific site, really just opens their eyes and all of that to the faith. And like for a cruise, for example, there's tons of time, touring during the day. You get a nice message at the specific sites that one of the various cruises might visit. And then also having personal meditation or reflection when you get back on board, maybe before dinner or after dinner, or just, there's also sea days too, to where you have time to really digest what you've seen and what you've heard the days prior to that. So, we definitely pride ourselves in making that a very big part of all of these tours, is to give enough time for members of a church, or maybe just people that are going with a group, to hear from a pastor or someone there. So definitely, 'cause that's a huge question we get a lot, because people, they will read through the written itineraries and they say, hey, this seems pretty packed. It's, is there going to be enough time for my pastor to, perform a baptism, or are they going to have enough time to give a devotion at a specific site? And that is something that we definitely pride ourselves in offering, is giving ample time for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to cut in a little bit, because that's one of my favorite aspects of our programs and what we do. Like I've seen many a time the Jordan River baptism services, or, we like to end the Holy Land programs with a Garden Tomb communion service to kind of wrap up everything and everybody have that fellowship together and kind of contemplate everything they've experienced during the journey. But you can even find that in other destinations. Like, I've been with many a group that when they're visiting Corinth, they'll stand near the bema where Paul spoke to the Corinthians, and they'll read from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which is of course all about love, and they'll actually do vow renewal services. Right. So, your group leader, or you as a group leader, can get creative and, really think outside the box at some of these places and have really meaningful, amazing moments.
Absolutely. I love that. And we work with a lot of Catholic groups too, Bethany. Can you share a little bit about maybe what that process looks like? Because it's a little bit more complicated when you have to schedule masses in the Eucharist and whatnot. What does that look like for our Catholic groups?
Sure. For our Catholic groups, and creating special moments for them, when they're bringing a priest with them, we make sure that they will have a private mass daily. We work very, very hard on that. And so, like, for instance, if they were visiting Lourdes in Fatima, we will make sure while they're in Lourdes that there is free time that they can go and swim in the healing waters of the bath after having had like a private mass led by the priests that they're traveling with as a community, in this very special place. We also provide time in Lourdes and Fatima, both for them to go back out in the evenings after they've, done their touring and seen the sites of the visitation and the apparitions and all of that, to join in the candlelight processionals. And you will have thousands of people from all over the world that join into those processionals. So not only did they get the faith-based experience with their parish, but they got to experience something special with, in this case, Catholics from all over the world.
Absolutely.
And of course, you know, if we've got a Catholic group visiting the Holy Land, we make sure that they have ample time that they can do all of the Stations of the Cross, going down the Via Dolorosa, spend time really contemplating Jesus' sacrifice before they get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and they have a mass celebrating the resurrection. So, you know, whether you're a Catholic or Protestant, you know, it's so important to us that we make sure you have these really meaningful experiences.
Absolutely.
And I want to just plug too, there's other groups too that work with us. And I love that about ETS. We work with Catholics, Orthodox, and there's some smaller groups that like the Messianic Jewish world. I'm a Jew. And so you have to understand there's certain sensitivities. Messianic Jews or nominal Jews even are not looking for a basilica tour. They want a different, a more organic experience that maybe doesn't have architectural components to it besides maybe the Western Wall. We are as sensitive as possible to each of these groups that come to us. And in fact, I know that we've even had some Mormon groups that have said, can you offer a Mormon pilgrimage either in the US or in the Holy Land or Greece? And we do our best. We don't have representation from all of those different groups, but we do our best to accommodate as a service for all of those different streams in order to be able to honor them in providing pilgrimage.
Absolutely. And even for like our staff, we have so many folks here from different backgrounds, different denominations, different religions that, you know, they can really speak to those specific needs. Like a Catholic group, you know, we have a lot of, you know, Catholic people that work with us here that they know what a Catholic group would need specifically for that tour, and a Messianic group, you know, what they would specifically need, or a Protestant
we'll just hit
group.
up David.
Exactly. You know, so we just have so many different people from different walks of life and denominations to where we're able to, you know, really pick their minds and then find out what really works best for these groups and vet them.
Yeah, and we're totally open to customizing it. If there's some place that is really meaningful, so you like one of our itineraries, but the group leader you're working with or you as a group leader are like, but I really want to add this in, all you have to do is ask. And if you think you're going to have a group of 20 or more, we're happy to really dig deep and create a custom itinerary that's going to be the most meaningful for your group.
Would you say our standards mostly geared towards Protestants or mostly geared towards Catholics or ecumenical? Or do we have some of both?
Yeah, the standards are really non-denominational. We have specific Catholic pilgrimages because about 28% of what we do are Catholic programs these days. Everything else is pretty much, we keep it non-denominational. So no matter what version of Protestant you are, you'd be able to enjoy it. So anyone that's joining any of the standard tours, and we'll get Catholics, Baptists, Methodists, Lutherans, all on the same tour. I mean, if you're going to the Holy Land, all of those people believe Jesus was born there in Bethlehem in the West Bank. And then, you know, he spent his time in ministry there. He died there. All of them agree that Paul was an apostle and he was set forth and he had his missionary journey. So, you know, we don't have to dig really deeply when we're doing the Bible-based tours, especially, or even if it's just something like going to Africa and learning about the history of the slave trade in Ghana and interacting with local Christians. It's a lot of non-denominational people over there versus, you know, one specific denomination. So, you know, it's going to appeal to any Christian to commune with other Christians from around the world for the most part and learn about their experiences.
And I think another great thing that we do also is on our website, on the Find a Trip page, we categorize those tours very easily. So if it's something specific to Catholics, that'll have its own page there, so you're scrolling through and you know that those are something that is you know, something for Catholics, and then for the most part, you know, all of the other, like you said, all of the other standards that we offer, you know, are pretty much, you know, we can fit into all denominations there.
Yeah,
so
we get into a little bit of a niche. Like if you go to the church heritage section, you know, you could find something specific to Luther, something specific to Wesley, things like that. But, you know, especially the biblical site ones, Greece, Turkey, Egypt, going to Jordan, Holy Land, you know, we try to make them open to every denomination.
Absolutely.
And I have to say that I have felt that very few companies, actually, I don't know of any other company that does as well as we do, branching out and knowing how to facilitate excellence for all of those different streams. And so I'm really proud of us for being able to navigate that. At the same time, we do have very specific requests that come in. I was talking with somebody from a stream of Presbyterianism this week, and they wanted to do something very specific in the Reformed movement in the Holy Land. And although we're not facilitating it, because I had the knowledge about it, I was able to help coach him a little bit on who to reach out to. There's actually a great Bible verse, and I think there's a tie-in here, but we always love to add a scripture or two as we're discussing. Thank you, Bethany, for finding this one. This is from Hebrews. This is the Epistle to the Hebrews, or the Messianic Jews, chapter 10, verses 24 through 25. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
Because we're talking about the destination is not what's faith-based, it's the fellowship you're having with people as you travel. So that verse in Hebrews just really kind of sprung to mind of like remembering that fellowship is what makes the journey meaningful.
I love that. That's really cool. And fellowship doesn't necessarily have to mean in a church building.
No.
Or in a synagogue. I was very inspired by this story of the travel advisor who was facilitating something really for other people, but she was the TC and she went and so she had the opportunity to experience where Lydia came to faith. And near Kavala, they actually had a communion or a Eucharist given to them at this site. And she said it was one of the most spiritual experiences of her life. That was not in a church building. But I definitely think that we have certain programs that have a special blessing for women. And that might be one of the sites. Magdala is another one where I'm not a woman, but I imagine for women, there's something special about retelling the story of the woman with the issue of blood that they tell there in the Holy Land. And we even have, Bethany, you worked on constructing a Women of the Bible tour.
For 2026, we have a Women of the Bible tour, and we've got 2 different departures. So each day is going to focus specifically on a different woman from the Bible. So you're going to be visiting the sites relevant to her and learning about what she did there and doing devotions and reading from the scripture about these amazing stories of women in the Bible. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I'll go ahead and go over to etstours.com and the Find a Trip section and go to Holy Land Journeys. And if you scroll down, you'll find our Women of the Bible program. It's also in our, one more plug, brand new 2026 catalog. So if you haven't ordered one yet, you can also go to etstours.com and go ahead and order one now.
Talk to your travel advisor if they're the one that sent this to you, and they will make sure to get one in your hand or a digital copy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got so much that we can talk about, and we don't want to keep these too long, but just going back to the theme, the myth number 2, the destination makes travel faith-based. I think we'd all agree it's so much more than the destination. A destination is God's, but how do you steward that, and how do you facilitate the conversation and the time? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
One more thing before we end the show, we have another little word of wisdom from King Solomon, I believe, in Proverbs 18:15. The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. And I think it's so beautiful that people that are investing in themselves and in their communities are willing to do that on the road, on a camel, on a boat, and we get the pleasure of facilitating that. So if you have any prayer requests, feel free to bring those to our attention. Send those in through email, or if you want to talk to somebody over the phone. It's not necessarily a counseling session. We don't necessarily have clergy on staff, but we want to be brothers and sisters to you.
And we'll lift you up in our Tuesday meeting.
Exactly.
Absolutely, all the time.
All right, so now that we've kind of wrapped this one, why don't we put a teaser out there for the next episode? Myth number 3, who can host a group, or who can lead a group?
We'll find out.
I think, John, you're hosting next time.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Shalom.